and we would wrap it up. So I'm going to take a course where everyone will be entitled to react. Then we will continue the reading after that. Maybe tomorrow afternoon. If you are able to join us, that would be great. If you have this copy, if you have a copy of this book, I implore you to read with us. I think it's mostly fun when you open it yourself and you are following the reading. Also, if you don't have a copy, I also implore you to please get a copy. You'll be doing two things. Number one, you'll get to know more of the deeply corrupted Nigerian judiciary. And what does that even mean? When everybody just says they are all corrupt, you need to understand the corruption level. Okay? Then secondly, you will be contributing into helping the children with disability, special needs, like autism and what have you in Nigeria. Because the proceeds of this book goes straight into funding at least 4 different charitable groups in Nigeria, taking care of children with special needs in Nigeria. So you will be doing 2 things at a time. You'll be getting 2 things in that regard, okay? So let's go to chapter 3. Having told us about his background, what motivated him to go and read law or study law and become a lawyer and all that, his childhood, and those who impacted in his world views and all that. Now, I think this is us now getting into the heart of the matter, right? So let's go to chapter 3. The practice of law. Prince Ademola Adeniji Dele, otherwise known as the Prince of Hope, or Papa, was my friend and an older brother. I was president of the LASU Student Union, LASUSU, when he was released from Abacha's Gulag in 1995. His brother-in-law, Saheed Salawe, was a fellow student in the Faculty of Law, and I became known. So I came to know his wife, Antitawa, who was also a LASU student through Saheed Salawe, otherwise known as SS. I was literally adopted into the Adeniji Dele and Salawe families. He was one of my God-appointed gatekeepers. By the time I was done with my law degree program at LASU, there were 2 sets of LASU law graduates waiting to be admitted into the Nigerian law school. The Abacha dictatorship had decreed that the law school be relocated to Abuja. The dictator's daughter was ready to attend the school, and since the father had no interest in sending the daughter to the law school in Lagos, the school had to be moved to Abuja in order to accommodate the first daughter. The unplanned and forced movement to the new site, the former Center for Democratic Studies under Professor Omo Omorui, the center was one of Babangida's several social incubatory laboratories. The unpretentious killer of democracy, having no pretense of democratic intentions, put the moribund facility to use. The new facility couldn't take as many students as the Lagos campus that Abacha presumed to decree out of existence. And the Council of Legal Education was saddled with a backlog of qualified law graduates without the space to accommodate them. Papa followed me to Abuja and went with me to Buhari to see the then secretary to the Council of Legal Education, Prince Victor Olagbade Olateru Olagbegi. I also had a letter from him from Justice Musiliu Okwe Agbe, a very upright man and a model jurist. He was at the time a judge of the Lagos High Court. I was friends with his children, and he also wrote to VF, as Prince Olateru Olagbegi was popularly called, to urge that I be admitted. As with all things Nigerian, the unplanned nature of the Abuja relocation created a toll gate of solicitations and underhand deals. From the universities to the law school, admission into the law school became a racket, and access depended on who you knew. These are the men that God used to ensure that I went to the law school without further delay. They were the equalizers of my Nigerian factor. Upon graduation from the law school and being called to the bar, I had a decision to make about my next move. I was already 31 years old. I had spent a total of 12 years to earn a single degree. I was tired of being maintained by my mother, a single parent for over 20 years by this time, and I just wanted to stop being a burden to her and perhaps help her by not remaining a charge on her finances. I wanted to work with Wale Babalakin's firm. It was probably the best paying law practice in Lagos at the time, but my quest to work with him had nothing to do with the salary being paid. Wale Babalakin, son, had a reputation for being a sharp-witted businessman. He was always impeccably turned out. Didn't seem stuffy like the other senior counsels and the junior lawyers in the chambers. And he evoked all the stereotypes of the smart up and coming. Goal-getting attorneys. That was where I wanted to be. I, again, asked the help of Justice Okwe Agbe, as he then was, in speaking with Wale Babalakin. And he did. He was told that they had no space in the office. When I heard that Barrister Olawale Babalakin, BOB, as he was called, was friends with Papa, I pressed Papa into my lobby group as well, and he also spoke with Babalakin on my behalf. I am now not certain about who communicated the job offer to me, but I was offered the job of company secretary at another of Babalakin's businesses, Duncan Wood, as it was called, which was then the construction arm of his business. The job was paying 30,000 naira at the time, that his law office was paying 25,000 naira. I refused the job. I took the time to explain to everyone involved, Papa, Justice Okwe Agbe, that while I was not ungrateful for what was a great opportunity, I had never envisioned myself as a corporate lawyer, and I wouldn't be happy as a company's in-house counsel or secretary, and that all I wanted was to work in the litigation firm. I took the time to explain how I had spent so many years reading law, but with the clear hope of training as a barrister above all else. Justice Musiliu Okwe-Agbe found me my first job as I was exiting the law school to start my new life as a lawyer. New judges were also being appointed to the Lagos bench, and one of them was TAO Abdullahi. Okwe-Agbe, gay, was one of the oldest judges on the Lagos bench, and I believed he must, at some point, have told her of his need for a job for me. I was therefore directed to see her in a judicial chambers at the Abdullahi J. Law Office. TAO Abdullahi and Co. were principally counsel to the Ojomu chieftaincy family, one of the largest land-owning families in the Etiosa, Lagos State axis, and they had several lands-related matters in various courts. The practice, which was located at 125 Igboshere Road, was then being run by the duo of Mr. Mike Bayowa and the head of practice, and Ms. Fumi Babatunde as partners. I joined the practice as the new wig, the grunt, and generally began to learn my trade there. The firm had become known as Basa and partners by the time I joined on a princely salary of 5,000 naira monthly. The introduction to legal practice couldn't have been gentler. The head of chambers and practice, Mr. Michael Bayowa, was the model boss from whom to learn the basic of litigation, and is a gentleman to boot. Easygoing, no airs, a family man, Christian, scrupulously honest, friendly, and extremely fair-minded. He was ferociously loyal to our mutual boss in disguise for TAO. Only took her name off the wall. She remained the sole signatory to several accounts, and everything of consequence was run by her. She recruited me. As I already stated at the beginning, I do not intend to tell the story of my life, but then the law is my life. Whilst I shall consciously avoid making this book personal, it is inevitably and necessarily personal I met my future wife, Miss Fumi Babatunde, whilst employed at Basa and Partners. And when I decided to tell the story of that season of my life, I will tell the story in full. I shall, however, state for the records and on my honor that I never had any romantic thoughts, relationship, or engagement with the woman that has today become the love of my life and my true blessing, even though I walked with her with our tables side by side for the first 3 months of my professional life. I was at the time strenuously seeking to convince several unattached friends to consider dating the impeccably trained and beautiful senior in my office. I thank God for their collective blindness. I was already determined to spend a couple of years learning my trade. The fact that my mother continued to subsidize my living freed me of pecuniary considerations in deciding what job to accept and which to reject. Sacrificial parenting explains why I could thumb up my nose at a 30,000 naira per month salary to accept the 5,000 naira monthly job that I did accept in order to keep my date with destiny. My stay at Basa and Partners wasn't destined to be long, and it ended in what I believe to be 3 months. I take a lot of pride in being a lawyer, and it is for me the peak and noblest of all the professions. I am extremely chauvinistic about the primacy of counsel in the pecking order of a law practice. This was the catalyst for my earlier than planned exit from Basa and Partners. The practice comprised 3 lawyers, the head of the chambers, Mr. Michael Bayowa, my future wife, Ms. Fumi Babatunde, and my humble self, the newly minted wig. Then we had the clerk, Mukaila, and the receptionist, or typist, Joy. These were the lawyers and support staff of the law firm of Basa and Partners. This Joy, the typist it was, that proved the catalyst for my early departure, inevitable as that was always going to be, by my own deliberate design. I had to stop depending on my mother for the monthly subvention at some point, and 5,000 naira was not enough to live on, even at the time. I had come to be trusted with most legal drafting work by Mr. Bayowa pretty early. My Oga trusted my capacity with doctrine, law, and language to the point where he quickly stopped bothering to edit my work, and we also found that the lady rarely had any corrections to make to work drafted by me when sent to her for her scrutiny, as was the norm in my time at Basa and Partners. I handed Joy a draft of whatever it was I needed typed up, and that was where the problem began. As was the culture, she handed me a mock copy of the document printed on scrap paper. Reading through, I found what I believed to be a typing error or omission, and I explained to Madam Joy. In expectations of her prompt action to address her errors, I couldn't have been more wrong than I was to find you are the one that is wrong. Lawyer Dele, was her retort. Muti faint. I could have fainted and died in equal measure. I spent 3 sessions reading English language and linguistics. I had read every James Hadley Chase series before I even entered my teenage years. I read every fictional books that was on the shelves of the children's library at Aberdeen before I was out of primary school. I was taught the English language in my mother tongue. My secondary school library had no literary work to occupy me again by the time I was in Form 3. And I had read the Bible out of boredom at least 4 times before coming out of my teen, purely out of boredom and devoid of any quest for a God that was never outside of me. Madam Joy had dared to correct my use of the English language. Amy, the law, barrister, lawyer, akoneniwaju adajo. It was one thing to have survived stage fright at different times, appearing before magistrates and the rent tribunals as a nervous new wig. And then there was the error of having to tell a judge that my principal was in another court and I needed to have our case stood down as had been agreed with the opposing counsel. Try talking with your tongue cleaved to the roof of your mouth. The impertinence was for me a final straw. How dare the support staff query a lawyer's call in the pursuit of his professional duty? I sent the draft back to be printed with a clear rebook and instructions to follow the original letters of my draft, and was handed the document in short order. As has been the lifelong predilection with me, I read through the final print before I would send the work out. Lo and behold, the editorial judgment of my self-appointed Oga remained intact and untouched. I was enraged, incensed, and just about ready to explode. Why? I demanded, as I struggled to rein in my temper in the face of her sneering insolence. I was wrong, she insisted, and she correct, my error arising from my newness at the bar. I shall refrain from telling you the response that issued from me, but it ended with the impasse being referred to Mr. Bayowa for his adjudication. I was right, he rude, and she was wrong. But it wasn't enough for me. I expected the secretary to be rebooked and told her place in the pecking order of the law office, and that was not done. The fact that she was unapologetic about the incident and somewhat rude made it difficult for me to accept that she was not reprimanded. I resigned my employment with Basa and Partners with immediate effect. My laid back Oga was taken aback, and so was my other senior, Ms. Babatunde. They appealed and pleaded, all to no avail, and meeting a brick wall. Mr. Bayowa went to report back to our ultimate Oga, who promptly issued a warrant for my appearance in her chambers at the Abuja High Court. How is a woman of considerable bulk, and all of her features are exaggerated and easy to caricaturize, but she is also charismatic and can be quite charming. All fantastic camouflage for a cunning mind that is completely sybaritic in focus. She is a formidable woman and a very impatient bully. She barely listened to my growls before declaring me the wrong party, and she missed the opportunity to hear out my grievances. She capped it all by presuming to order me to withdraw my letter of resignation. I simply ignored her and went through with my intention as already stated in the letter of resignation. I wasn't to see her again until over 2 years later, on the occasion of my marriage, when she was the chairperson at the wedding reception. That is the woman that Dele Farotimi said when she had a case with Afe Babalola. That was the woman that was the case was assigned to, right? And the woman dismissed the case even before the right. I think we are getting to the juiciest part soon now, right? At the time of working with Basa and Partners, I was in a long-term relationship. My partner lived with her parents in Ikoyi, and I had finally given up my Okokomaiko student flat to become a squatter in my late friend Ibrahim Bakari's flat at EJ Housing Estate at Dolphin. I was within striking distances of my workplace and my girlfriend's home. This was before our world shrank with the advent of mobile phones in its current ubiquitous fashion. I was therefore at the time of becoming unemployed, also pretty much homeless. And it was at my squat that I waited out the season before the next job and the scene of one of the defining moments of my legal practice. We are getting there. So that woman, which according to Dele Farotimi, that's Tao, T-A-O, who happened to be a judge, who was instrumental to how Dele Farotimi got his first job, his 5,000 naira a month job at Basa and Partners. So when Dele Farotimi resigned, she ordered him to come and see her. Without listening to him, she ordered him to go back to that practice. And Dele Farotimi didn't listen. But 2 years later, after Dele Farotimi and Miss Babatunde Fumi Dele Farotimi's wife now, when they were to get married, it was the same tall woman that was the chairperson or the chairman of the occasion. Right. We are getting there. So it's all connecting now. Sometimes you just wonder, why is he telling us all of that? Why is he mentioning those names? Because all those names he's mentioning, they are going to come up later in what he actually revealed in this book. Let's try on. Chapter 4, the laborer's wage. In the immediate aftermath of my resignation from my primary employers, Basa, I was left with no choice but to stay home whilst waiting for another job. I was in the flat one late morning when I heard a knock at the door. It was a young woman. She seemed about my age and was asking for me. She said she had been told a lawyer lived there, she said, and something about some other female lawyer was in the mix. I was not the one she was seeking. She was nonetheless happy to brief me or any other lawyer, she insisted. I invited her into the flat and asked what it was she wanted a lawyer to do. She had just bought a property at one of the Jakonde estates, he explained, and she needed a lawyer to draft the conveyance agreement. I believe that the property in question was located at Lekki, one of the Morocco resettlement scheme flats, and she wanted to know what she would have to pay. She would have to pay me for the job. I calculated the bill using the scale, and it came to a little above 30,000 naira. Now, you must remember that I was paid above 5,000 naira at my last and only job as a lawyer. I offered to produce the document at a discounted rate of about 20,000 naira. The lady took one look at me and concluded that she wasn't about to pay my clearly unemployed self that priceless sum, and proceeded to offer me about 5,000 naira. I was very happy to turn her down, and in the process, cemented the principle that I have preached to every counsel that has ever worked with me. I explained to her my reasoning. I told her how I had reduced my bill without her having to ask on account of two facts that I then proceeded to elucidate after making sure to first apologize and then ask her indulgences. The established fact that she was at the time a single woman doing what most men had not done evoked memories of my own mother, a hard-working single mother. The second being the fact that she was a working client and I was a broke, unemployed new wig. These were, however, not sufficient reasons for me to devalue my own professional capital, and I walked away happily. Flora Subonimi. So that's the end of chapter 4. Do you think we can take on chapter 5, which happened to be about, let's see, about 10 pages? No, it's actually very long. Do you want me to continue reading, or we should take a break and take calls and let us digest what we have read so far? Which one would you prefer? Continue reading, or let's take a break? Oh, I should continue. Okay. Fair enough. Let's go to chapter 5. Somebody said chapter 5, chapter 6. We are talking about 12 pages now. That's what we're going to go on. So if you are cool with it. And how about the reading, by the way? Is the reading not too fast, not too slow? I know it's not slow, but I hope it's not too fast. It's not like... Because, yeah, we are getting to the juiciest part now. So, but let's continue then. So the journey to KOT, chapter 5. I left the 5,000 naira a month job with Basa and partners, unworried about the lost wages. I wasn't exactly living on it, and whilst I was pretty rough around the edges and nowhere near being ready to inflict my ignorance on the society, I did not bother to go around looking for a job. I took the time to give myself some rest from the routine of the new life had just begun, and had enough time to assure my father that I was totally uninterested in joining the Osun State Judicial Service or services, in spite of his urging and preachment. But that's a tale to be told another day. Ademola Adeshina Ogunlana, an older friend from my days at Adanla Hostel in Okokomaiko, had left his employment with Lawal Pedro's private law office and was on his own. He had built himself an advocacy practice that was already known for his imagination and lawyering dexterity. He had just got Oji, the cannibal, off the murder rap. You remember Clifford Oji? Okay. So, lawyer Ogunlana, God rest his soul, is late now. He died this year. He had just got Oji, the cannibal, off the murder rap, properly declared insane, and was at the time engaged in the defense of Guru Maharaji. His junior, Tomi,